Section 44 of Stephen Wolfram's book, An Elementary Introduction to the Wolfram Language, is about importing and exporting things that are mostly outside of the Wolfram language. For example, this imports the text from the home page of the United Nations. The result is a string that can be used in computations just like any other string. For example, the languages in that text can be identified by first splitting the text into separate lines and then using the language identify function to identify the languages. Splitting the text into separate lines can be done using the string split function with the new line character, entered as \n, as the separator between strings. Then use the language identify function to identify the language of each string in that list. You can also import things like hyperlinks or images from a website. For example, this imports the hyperlinks from the UN website. This imports the images from the Wikipedia front page. For a more sophisticated example, this uses the nestgraph function to get the list of hyperlinks from Stephen Wolfram's website and the list of hyperlinks from each of the linked web pages, and then draws a graph showing all of those hyperlinks. You can also import and export ordinary files in hundreds of formats, including formats for spreadsheets, images, sounds, geometry, databases, log files, and many other formats as well. For example, this imports a file in PNG format from Stephen Wolfram's website. In this example, the import function determines the file format based on the file extension, which is those letters after the period in the file name. The file format can also be specified using the second argument in the import function. You can also import and export files on your computer system or files stored in the Wolfram Cloud. You can get a list of currently supported import formats and the value of the variable $import formats. Another source for data and a variety of services is a rapidly growing number of web APIs or application program interfaces. For example, Facebook has an API that you can access using the social media data function. This input uses the Facebook API and returns a Facebook friend network. Another external service the Wolfram language can access is web search. For example, this uses the web image search function to get information on colorful birds. This picks out just the thumbnail images from that search. You can find a list of supported external services in the Wolfram Language Documentation Center. Another important source of external data is the Wolfram Data Repository. You can find out what's available at the Wolfram Data Repository website. For example, this shows the page for the full text of Darwin's On the Origin of Species. The data in the Wolfram Data Repository has all been set up to be easy to work with in the Wolfram language. For example, this loads the text from On the Origin of Species and creates a word cloud for the words in that text. You can also send email from the Wolfram language. For example, this sends an email message through the Wolfram Cloud to the email address for the current Wolfram Cloud account. This sends an email with subject Wolf and with an attached image to a test account. You can also import and export things to and from the Wolfram Cloud. For example, this uses the Cloud Export function to export an image in PDF format to the Wolfram Cloud. Clicking on the hyperlink returned by the Cloud Export function will typically open a web browser with a page containing the thing that was exported, which here is an image of a circle. You can use the import function to import that image from the cloud back into your Wolfram language session. You can also export files to your local computer. For example, this exports a table of prime numbers to a file on this computer. Here is the resulting file displayed in a spreadsheet program outside of the Wolfram language, and this imports the contents of that file back into the Wolfram language. The list of currently supported export formats is given in the value of the variable $export formats. That list of export formats includes formats used by 3D printers. For example, this gives an image of a geometric solid, and this exports that image in a format suitable for 3D printing. And here is a result of 3D printing from that file. There is also a function called Printout3D that handles all of the steps of sending files for 3D printing, such as sending files to external 3D printing services. For example, this makes a random clump of spheres, and this uses the Printout3D function to send that file for 3D printing to the Sculpteo printing service. You can click on the link in that result to go to the Sculpteo website to see the file or make arrangements for printing. That's the end of the examples for section 44. To summarize, here is the programming vocabulary from this section. The Wolfram language includes a broad range of facilities for importing and exporting data and information and other things in all common formats from a variety of places, including the internet and web services and files in the cloud or on your own computer. You can find more information about importing and exporting by choosing Wolfram Documentation under the Help menu to bring up the Documentation Center page, clicking the Data Manipulation and Analysis button, and then choosing Importing and Exporting under the menu that comes up, which brings up a page of links to information about everything in this section and the whole range of features in the Wolfram language for importing and exporting. Here are the exercises from the end of Section 44. As an example, consider exercise 44.5. Use image instance queue to find pictures in the Wikipedia article on ostriches that are of birds. It is easy enough to get the list of images from that article by starting with the example from earlier in the section that gives the images from the Wikipedia front page, and modifying that example to instead import images from the Wikipedia article on ostriches. The result includes images of ostriches as well as logos and maps and other things that are not pictures of ostriches or of other birds. To pick out the images that are of birds, you can use the select function with a test that uses image instance queue. Here is a suitable test. This is a pure function that uses image instance queue and that returns true if the argument is an image of a bird. To complete the exercise, you can paste that pure function into an input that uses the select function to pick out the images of birds from the images that are imported from the Wikipedia article on ostriches. In general, the world of file formats and computer connections outside of the Wolfram language often won't be as clean and organized as what we're used to inside of the Wolfram language, and things can change without warning, and so it is common to encounter issues involving file formats and computer connections and so on, but the Wolfram language has a good range of tools to help you deal with all of the possibilities.